welcome to the Gaithersburg Book Festival. My name is Adam Van Grack. I'm a city council member of Rockville, Maryland, which is the sister city to the south of Gaithersburg. And we're pleased to have you join us here today for this wonderful panel. We have two authors here who are going to be part of the panel. Matt Goldman, who wrote The Murder Show, and Carter Wilson, Tell Me What You Did. And we also have Aymar, who's written such
Thank you.
Written such wonderful books as When She Left, No Home for Killers, They're Gone, and The Unrepentant. We are pleased to bring you this fabulous festival thanks in part to the generous support from our sponsors, including the title sponsor, the Carnegie at Washington Center, and all of our volunteers. When you see them, including those in the front row, please express our deep appreciation to them. A few brief announcements. Please silence all of your devices. If you're reading your books at home, that's fine. Here, we've got a lot of other people, so it could disturb the presentation. For the latest updates regarding the Gaithersburg Book Festival this year and next year, you can follow them on Facebook, Twitter, or X, as well as on Instagram. Additionally, your feedback is incredibly valuable to us. Please take a few moments to fill out the survey that's available on the website, GaithersburgBookFestival.org, or the QR code that you'll see on signs throughout the festival. And by submitting a survey, you'll be entered into a drawing for a Visa gift card. Now, our authors here, Matt Goldman and Carter Wilson, will be signing books at the end of this presentation. Now, the books are on sale at Politics and Prose at the Activity Center. We've learned that I believe Carter's book might be sold out. You can check when you're there. But he'll tell you during the presentation other ways to get the book if you're looking for it, but possibly get a signed book plate. A quick plug for buying books. This is a free event, but it does help our festival if you buy lots and lots and lots of books. The more books we sell at our events, the more publishers will want to send authors to our event. And by purchasing books from our partners at Politics and Prose, you're helping to support one of the world's great booksellers. It benefits our local economy, supports our local jobs, and by the way, they make great gifts. Did I mention buying lots and lots of books? So if you enjoy this program and you're in a position to do so, please buy books here today at the Activity Center. Now, if you're here, you probably know you're at the Thriller Tent. And we've got three authors here that deal with crime thrillers. The two books that are going to be focused on today, Matt Goldman's The Murder Show and Carter Wilson's Tell Me What You Did, is a unique juxtaposition because both of them begin with media, whether it's a television show where there's actually a union strike in The Murder Show or a podcast in Tell Me What You Did. That media ends up becoming the forum or the basis for the crimes that happen later on. Now, I also have to tell you, if you look at these books, and actually if you look at these authors' past books, you'll see that there actually is a lot of integration with the police department. In Matt Goldman's book, The Murder Show, you actually have Roe, which is one of the characters who's a police officer, and you've actually got the chief of the police, Chief Nunez, who's there. And in Carter's book, you have our officer Galdecki. So the police department has a lot of role. So before I was presenting here, I actually texted to our chief of police in Rockville, and I texted access to the links via Amazon to try to read the books. And I said, can you give a little bit of a flavor with regard to these books and what they're talking about the police departments? Well, he texted me back, and I'd like to read his text exactly. This is from Police Chief Jason West. Adam, please stop texting me questions about crime novels and movies. I have important police business to deal with. So Rockville City Police Department is significantly better than a lot of police departments that this dealt with in their works. In fact, in the Shallows, Matt, they are not a rudderless suburban police department. So without further ado, please welcome our panel here today, Matt Goldman, Carter Wilson, and our moderator, Aymar.
Thank you so much. And I want to say thanks before we start to Gaithersburg for putting this festival on. I've come here for years now, and it's my favorite book festival of the year. Don't tell the other book festivals I said that. So to start, Carter and Matt, can you each tell us, give us a brief synopsis of your novels?
Sure. So tell me what you did is the story of 30-year-old Poe Webb, who is the host of the nation's most popular true crime podcast. And the conceit of the podcast is callers call in and they anonymously confess to crimes that they've committed in their past. And if Poe believes them, they have a conversation about the criminal mind. And she gets a caller in one day, this exceptionally creepy person. And his confession is that he murdered Poe's mother. And Poe obviously knows that her mother was murdered. Poe actually witnessed the murder when she was only 13 years old. But Poe knows this can't be the guy because Poe spent 8 years of her life tracking that man down and murdering him herself. So it becomes this whole cat and mouse. Who is this guy? How much does he actually know about me? And was he the actual killer of my mother? So kind of lighthearted romantasy.
Yeah. Lighthearted romp.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and my book is about a television writer named Ethan Harris who has a show called The Murder Show on one of the streaming services. And it's been on for 3 years, and it's been doing worse each year. And he goes in and he pitches the 4th season, and they say, this stinks, come back with something better. And so he goes back to the drawing board, and the Writers Guild strike happens, the one that we went through within the last year and a half or so. And so he goes back to the Midwest where he's from. And while he's trying to think of an idea, he runs into old high school friends. And one of them is Rosalie Greenman, who's a Minneapolis cop. And Ro and Ethan were best friends in high school. And the summer after they graduated, they went on a road trip with a third friend, Ricky. And the car broke down, and he walked for help and never came back. And so he was killed by a hit and run. To this day, they don't know if it was on purpose or an accident. And Ro, it happened well outside of Minneapolis, so she has no jurisdiction. She's looking into it on her own. And she convinces Ethan to do it under the guise like, you can use this, whatever we find, you could use it for your TV show. It would help. And he doesn't really believe her, like most writers who are, when somebody comes up to them and says, boy, I have a good idea you should write. That never goes well because somebody has an idea and then you have to do all the work. But he's a little interested in Ro. So it's about them looking into this death that happened 22 years ago. And the more they find, the little darker and more twisted it gets.
So both of your books focus on, as you mentioned, and the introduction mentioned, focus on the entertainment field with podcasting and screenwriting. What led each of you to writing about those fields to inform your novels?
Well, I have a friend, and we used to always exchange podcast recommendations. And he came up to me one day and he said, you should really check out this podcast. In this podcast, people can call this voicemail and just leave a voicemail apology for somebody. And the podcast just plays these apologies. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And then I started thinking, well, what if it was a confession, not an apology? And then that's how ideas happen, right? So from then I'm like, I don't want to listen to this podcast. I don't want to get tainted. I'm going to write a book about a podcast where people confess. And that's all I knew going into it.
Now, you have your own podcast as well, right?
I do. Yeah, I interview other writers. I just had Matt on the show last week, actually.
Mm-hmm. Did that inform how much did that inform the book? Did you have to do any research in podcasting outside of that?
I mean, a little bit. I hate research in general, so I try to avoid it at all costs. And I've been podcasting for a few years now, so I know kind of what type of equipment you have to do. And magically, you don't really have to have amazing stuff to have a pretty professional podcast. So I leaned a lot on my own experience.
And Matt, what about you?
Well, I also hate doing research. I wrote television in Los Angeles for over 30 years. I started when I was 24. And so this is my 8th book. It's the first one that refers to my work as a television writer. But it was an area I knew. And so I didn't have to do any research for it. It also captures a weird thing for people who work in Hollywood. Ethan is 40 years old, which to normal people does not sound old, but in Hollywood, you're getting up there. And so it puts an added pressure on him. Like if he doesn't sell his show, he feels he's too old to go work on someone else's show, and his career might be over. So I use that. Yeah.
So your work as a screenwriter, you worked in comedy, you worked on Seinfeld, you also wrote some amateur pornography. Did you find that
I would say it was pretty professional.
I mean, I did my research.
The writing is the most important part. Yeah.
What did you have to unlearn as a screenwriter when it came to writing novels?
What did I have to learn?
To unlearn.
Oh, to unlearn. You know what? The only thing and I'm just realizing this now because I'm so sharp, after 8 books and more coming in the near future. In the book world, I don't have to try to be entertaining all the time. And in fact, I think I shouldn't try to be entertaining. It's okay for a paragraph to stand on its own, just for the words and the emotion. It doesn't have to, I came from TV comedy, and there was like a laugh per minute quota you were supposed to go for. And my books are not comedies, but some of the characters are funny. But I'm just learning it to back off on that.
For both of you, did you encounter learn anything interesting in your research for these books, or as you were writing them? I know you don't like research, but as you were writing them, was there anything unusual that you came across? And you shouldn't answer no.
I'll let you answer that first one.
Well, the one thing I learned that was interesting is because I have a character die in a hit and run, and he's found the next day. And I really wanted him to be up in a tree. So I researched, is that feasible? Is it possible? Because nothing in mysteries or thrillers are ever implausible. Mm-hmm. But yeah, bodies can be really far from where they were struck and quite high up. That is what I learned. So be careful when you're driving out there. Yeah.
Just if you do get the point of this is if you do get hit by a car, just don't do it around trees.
Right.
Yeah, they'll find your body right away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was realizing when we have a whole flashback scene where Poe hunts this person down and kills him, and she essentially meets him on a dating app, kind of figures that out, and lures him to her New York City apartment and kills him there. And I had her figure out how does this 115-pound woman get this corpse to some boggy field somewhere. And so I started thinking about musical instrument cases, like what roadies have. So she got a tuba case, and I'm like, can a tuba case hold a body? So that was some interesting research.
How did I'm sorry for stuttering, but how did you conduct that research?
You can see it on the History Channel, so Missing Cases Files.
Matt, as you were, you mentioned when you were discussing your novel, the character of Ro, and as I was reading it, I was wondering if the romantic interest in your book changed as you were writing it.
Yeah, the romantic interest between Ro and Ethan, that interest did not change, but how it played out really changed both in the middle of the book and at the end of the book. I really tried to find a reality there. And so it took several drafts to get that right.
So when you're doing that, do you have to, and I guess Carter, if you want to address this as well, I don't want to ask the pantser plotter thing, but I'm going to ask the pantser plotter thing. Do you draft the book entirely ahead of time, or is it something that you write just off the top of your head?
Yeah, I'm a pantser, so I don't know what's happening. I've tried to outline, and my brain doesn't work that way. So I have this concept of, okay, it's a book about a podcast where people confess things. That's all I know. So I just pick a person, a random name, and I just start writing to see where it goes. My book actually has a romantic interest in it, but that didn't exist with the first draft. And my editor said, I want to see more of this other character. So then I romantically linked them. So I just go off of my instinct, but there's a lot of editing that obviously has to happen at that point.
Yeah, I do not plan out in advance. When I worked in television, I worked on over 500 episodes of TV. I wasn't the writer that says written by, but I was one of the writers. in the room who took it from a one-line idea to a one-page to an outline to a script. So many drafts of each of those things. And almost without fail, by the time you get to the outline stage and 4, 5, 6 drafts of the outline, so the network and the studio, everybody thinks it's great, and then the writer goes off and writes a script faithful to that outline, 99% of the time the script stinks. And it's because the part of your brain you use to write an outline is very logical. This happens, this happens, this happens. But if you create 3-dimensional characters who behave consistently, then they often don't fit that. This happens, and this happens. So I don't do that. I don't outline. I let it get a little messy. I let myself get lost. And I find that it's better for me, at least, to write from the inside out.
As somebody who outlines, this makes me very nervous. In fact, I'm just so orderly that I really want to straighten our chairs so we're all facing the exact same way. This is making me uncomfortable. So let's move on. Well, actually, one last question about that. How many, from start to finish, about how many drafts did each of these books go through?
So I think with Tell Me What You Did, I think I looked back halfway through and read it, just mostly to remember what I had written. Then I wrote the second half, and then it's probably 2 more passes, so not a lot. And then it goes to my partner, who's my first reader. Then it goes to my agent, who I have notes from. And then when it gets to the publisher, I mean, that's 6 rounds of editing. Some are very big, like, hey, can we get another subplot in here? So it's never done. I never think of it as I would never write the words "the end" at the end of a draft, because I'm like, all right, it's just ready for the next stage.
Yeah, I'm just guessing, but I would guess from very start to end, each of my books goes through about 8 drafts, I would say.
And is that, are those significant change drafts, or does it vary from significant change to just grammatical changes?
Mine are not usually significant changes. Once I'm done with the first draft, the story is basically in place. But I will do things like beef up more of one character or make different choices in a chapter about how a conflict gets resolved. And then there's the things at the end with the copy editors as well.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't count those.
And I'll just add it. For me, it changes book to book, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm writing something now and I'm 100 pages in and it just doesn't feel right yet. The character's I feel like I'm too distant from who this character is, and I'm too interested in what happens and not so much interested in the character. So I'm like, all right, let me stop. Let me go back, because whatever mannerisms change has to change from the beginning. So I'd rather do it now while I'm 100 pages in, because I haven't quite fully defined who this person is yet. So every book is a little bit different.
Do you all take breaks between books? Or are you constantly finish one book and you're right on to the next?
Go ahead.
I'm right on to the next. Mm-hmm. I will take a couple of days maybe. Yeah. But it's the only thing I know how to do. It's been my job since I was 22 years old. So I pretty much do it every day.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. I write every day, but usually just for an hour. And it's a moment of joy for me every day. I'm so looking forward to this moment. And what happens is when you're about halfway through a book, some idea will pop into your head. And I'll think to myself, if I'm still thinking about this, I won't write it down, then maybe that's my next book. And I'll finish the draft. I'll finish all my edits of the current book. And then, literally the next day, and if I'm not writing, I'm at least starting to put words on paper about what might this book be about. But it's hard to miss a day.
Yeah, a friend of mine once said, a writer I know, said that writing's like having homework for the rest of your life and it never ends.
Yeah.
But there are those moments of joy. I mean, they're moments, but yeah.
It's hard work, but if you love it,
it is.
Everything's hard work. So why don't you put all that hard work into something you enjoy? I think.
So without giving away any spoilers, a character in Tell Me What You Did appears in one of your past books. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you regularly do? Set up a kind of shared universe for your stories?
I do have a universe. I have some books that overlap, some references that nobody is ever going to get that occur throughout different books. In Tell Me What You Did, I have a character come back just because it just felt right. And I missed her, and it was nice to be able to see what she was up to. What I didn't realize that it's hugely problematic when you get into film and TV rights, because where that character first appeared, that book is optioned for film. And so they own the rights to that character. And now she's appeared in this different book, which is now getting optioned by a different company. And so I had no idea, and it's a big problem. So you have to, second company has to agree not to have that character at all in any form appear if it ever gets made into something.
Does that have to be, how deep does it have to go? Is that a name change, or is that?
I think it has to be more than that. That's what we first suggested, but and as you know, they change everything anyway. But it's that representation of that character has to be completely different.
So nobody tell the second company about the other book. Just
Yes.
There's a loyalty oath outside.
That's
if you
right.
could just sign it.
I mean, it's a good problem to have. I'm not complaining, but I just had zero idea.
In the Matt, in the murder show, you switched the story between different characters. Was that challenging, that construction, and did a POV change throughout those drafts?
No, I'm really in two people's head in that book. I'm in Ethan's and Rose. My first five books were first person, which I thought, that's going to be easy. I only have to track the story from one person's point of view. But then when I started writing, I realized that's not, you need to know what every character is thinking, even if they're not telling the story themselves. So having a one or two or three points of view helps it feel a little less claustrophobic, I think. It can also feel less intimate, so there's trade-offs. But I do like to be able to bounce around to different locations. And, I'm writing a book right now back in first person. If something happens elsewhere, that character has to hear about it from somebody else.
Do you want to talk on that as well?
Yeah, it's I love listening. I could talk about POV forever, but to the excitement of everybody here,
nothing's more interesting to readers.
But your mention of claustrophobic that's what I'm going for.
Yeah.
So I usually write from one point of view, first person, present tense. You just know what they know. It's visceral, but to your point, that can be sometimes people are just like, I've got to get out of this head for a second. But I remember early on when I started writing out of the blue, I literally didn't know what I was doing. And I was very fortunate to get an agent, and she said, never write more than 3 points of view. And I'm like, okay, I don't even know what you're talking about. But I realized as I've developed as a reader as well, I don't like a lot of points of view. I just get confused very easily. So if there's ever more that I probably never have any more than 2 points of view in my book. And it's easier to keep track of everything.
Yeah, I actually have a question for the audience here. You didn't know I was going to ask you all questions. No, I'm just kidding. Just show of hands. How many people here prefer first person versus third person? More of a direct, I did this. Oh, that's so interesting. I love reading first person. I think it just brings you right in the action, puts you in someone's head. Yeah. When I first got into writing, I remember my agent and editor both said third person's more popular. So everyone else likes reading third person, or is it like second person subjective?
Yeah.
Really looking for a yes or no answer.
She makes a good point, though, because I think it was my fifth book that I switched to first person, and it just flowed out of me. And I'm like, oh, I think this is my voice. I didn't realize that. And it's just what I do best. So, I think it's what are your strengths? What feels the most organic to you as a writer?
Do you find, though, that part of that comes from, a novel so engrossing and takes so long that And if you do multiple novels from the same perspective, the same POV, you're kind of, when you write differently in a different POV, you get this freedom.
Yeah.
It's like writing from, a different gender or something like that. Yeah. It tends to open up something. Do you think that's true with you?
What do you think?
I definitely think that's true. And to do a book in a different way is just going to make the next book after that and the book after that more full and more rich, I think.
Yeah. I think it's great to try different things. I remember early on with my first few books, I would hate when people would say who I know, they would read the books and be like, oh, this guy sounds just like you. I totally saw you in every bit of him. And I hated that. So I started writing from a female point of view, and it was totally freeing. It was, you're just unsaddled with all of your preconceived notions of things. And, you obviously want to have a lot of good feedback to make sure you're hitting all the right strides. And then the same thing shifting to first person. It was just like, oh, I didn't know that I enjoyed it more doing this. So yeah, it's great to experiment.
Speaking of experimentation, and just real quick, let's acknowledge how good a segue I made.
I was thinking that. I didn't want to say anything out loud.
It's so good, isn't it?
It's really impressive.
One thing I loved about your book, and I could imagine this could potentially get mixed reactions, but you used, I think, maybe three times QR codes.
Yeah.
And how did that come about? Did you get any pushback? And I made that kind of vague. If you want to explain.
Yeah. So Poe, who is the podcaster, she does these Zoom calls with these anonymous callers, and she promises to always delete the footage. But what they don't know is she always records herself on video with her iPhone, which is just above her monitor, her side of the conversation. And there's some really harrowing conversations that happen in this book. And I was writing the scene and I thought, I want to see what this looks like. And I'd gotten to know this actor, and I reached out to her and I said, hey, would you do a few scenes for me? Here's the dialogue. You're just recording yourself for your iPhone. And so she did. And she's done a lot of horror movies and things like that. And I kind of pictured this is what my character looked like. So she did it. I'm like, this is cool. So I packaged it as recovered evidence into these videos, and I linked them to QR codes. And I asked my editor, I'm like, I did this. Can we put this in the book? She's like, okay. And so, so there's 3 scenes where when you finish that scene, you can then watch it as recovered evidence, that scene going down. And it's weird because these videos just sit on my Google Drive, and I have a Bitly account for the links, and I've got 70,000 scans on these codes. And there's also a phone number in there that if you call that phone number, it does go to a voicemail, a really creepy voicemail. And so I get all these weird messages on my Google Voice. I just love doing stuff like that because it's fun.
I honestly thought it was so great for anybody who might be skeptical about that, because I don't think anybody would be, but I was telling a friend about it, and they were like, I think that takes away from the sanctity of the novel or some bullshit. And I was like, no. It actually works really well because you don't need the QR codes for the novel.
No, it's the same scene you just, it's 2 minutes of the same scene you just read.
And she's fantastic.
Yeah, she's great. Oh, I love her. Yeah.
And you provided that yourself. Was there any did the publisher provide any professional editing with
Nothing.
that?
It's all me.
Matt, one thing in your book you referenced Minnesota writers quite a bit.
Yeah.
What makes Minnesota such a fertile place for crime fiction? There's so many writers, especially just the Midwest in general, produces a lot. Is it just that being trapped inside the snow, like it's quarantined forever?
It's cold. It's dark. You're in a house with somebody for 6 months. You think about killing some of them. I think it's the same thing that Scandinavia has. It's life gets really quiet kind of for 6 months out of the year. You don't see your neighbors between December 1st and May 1st. And I just think there's a lot of room for the imagination.
Is there, we talked about your backgrounds and your experimentation with the QR codes. Is there another type of genre or something that's drawn you that you'd be interested in writing, or something else outside of novels and crime fiction?
It's difficult because sometimes you think about it and then you immediately you go back to your imposter syndrome. Like, oh, I wouldn't I love historical fiction. But I hate to research. So that would be a real problem, I think. I will say one thing that I'm doing that's still crime related, but is different is I am writing a customized murder mystery party for a group of people that's part of this charity auction that is going to happen next year sometime. So I have to write the entire script, and it's being performed by these people while they dine. And I'm like so excited for it. I have no idea how I'm going to do it, but I'm so excited.
Oh, that's awesome. Please top that.
I have a historical coming out next year.
Oh, he topped it.
Damn it. And yeah, I think about writing out of the genre all the time. So, and maybe that'll happen. Yeah.
Is it still in historical?
There's
crime
some
fiction?
crime in it, but it's really not what the thrust of the book is about. Yeah.
So you mentioned, you both talked about when you started in publishing. Can you describe what your path was? What first got you into writing crime fiction specifically?
I mean, I'll say I was 33 and I was taking an 8-hour-long class for this real estate license I used to have, a really boring class on ethics. And I had to pass the time. So I posed myself a murder mystery riddle. I literally made up a riddle, wrote it down. I'm like, I'm going to solve this riddle in the last 2 hours of the class. I couldn't figure it out. So I went home and it just nagged at me. And in 3 months later, I had a 400-page manuscript that it was terrible. I didn't know what I was doing, but it totally opened my eyes to I'm like, is this the universe talking to me? Like, maybe this is what I should be doing. And yeah, I mean, I haven't stopped writing since. I did get an agent with that book, but my first 3 books did not sell. So, but I've just been doing it.
Yeah, I had a long career of writing TV comedy, and I wanted to move into drama. And I'm telling the short version of this. And I thought, I'm going to work on a police show or something. So I'd always been a big reader, but it was always literary fiction. And I'd never read crime fiction. I just didn't. I called them big font books because I'd see people carrying them in the airport, and they always had huge fonts on the front. And I thought, I'm too good for that. And then, but I started reading crime fiction to do homework for writing television drama, and I just fell in love with crime fiction. Yeah. And then I thought, I'm going to try one of these, and that changed my life. Yeah.
Is there, do we have aspiring writers in the crowd here? Want to show of hands? Yeah. Okay. Is there a lesson that you learned on the way prior to getting publishing that you could pass on?
Oh, a million lessons. I actually am a writing coach now because I feel like since I went from not knowing anything 20 years later to having some degree of success, I just love talking to other writers. But I mean, this sounds really basic, but the thing that I've learned the most is just the writing every day. It is a muscle that just has to be built. And I still, 20 years later, write 1 hour a day. That's all I do. But if you do it 7 days a week, you can have a book done in 7 months, which is amazing. So I'm a book a year person. And, I was juggling it with a full-time job and everything and raising kids. And you can totally do it. I'm not going to say it's not hard, but it's totally achievable.
Yeah, and I would just say be kind to yourself. I'm a big proponent of writing every day also, or certainly whenever you can. It does add up. And when you go back and read it, and if you think it stinks, then welcome to the club. Everybody's first draft stinks. And so don't put too high of an expectation on yourself. The important thing is just sitting down. You don't even have to know what the story is, but if you write enough every day, it'll show you what the story is. And so just be a little generous with yourself and patient.
I love that.
Yeah, I also write every day, and if I don't, it feels like you just feel sluggish.
Yeah.
You know, I imagine it feels like not going to the gym if you go to the gym. I don't go to the gym. For each of you, what's been your best moment in publishing?
It's a tie between finding out I made the New York Times bestseller list and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar mentioning my books in his Substack. That was a big moment for me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. You get these moments that you're just like that you don't like. Tell Me What You Did was a Barnes and Noble National Monthly pick, and I didn't even know what that was, and it was life changing. So my editor called me, and I'm like, "That's great. Explain to me what that means." But yeah, and also I think getting nominated for awards from your peers. That's when we all suffer from imposter syndrome for years. So when you're recognized, even if you don't win the award, you're like, okay, maybe I'm not terrible at this.
Do you, one question a friend of mine likes to say that as hard as it is to get published, it's much harder to stay published. Do you agree with that, or? And are you calling my friend a liar?
Yeah, I think your friend's just bitter, maybe. Yeah. That hasn't been my experience. I'm glad I'm not. I think I think getting published now is terrifically hard. In genre fiction, it's just gotten more competitive, and it's even harder to get an agent now. But if you work well and play well with others, and you write good stuff, people are going to want to keep working with you.
Yeah, I agree with Carter. It has not been my experience. I had heard those stories before, horror stories from established authors saying, "Oh, maybe you'll get one book, but you're not going to get more. You'll definitely won't get 3," and that's just not been the case.
Yeah. One last question before we do questions from the audience. But what are you each working on next? Can you give us any detail on the books you mentioned?
Yeah, I just signed a 2-book deal, so I'm excited about that. They're standalones, but I'll just mention the one that will probably be out sometime late next year. It'll be a holiday mood read because it takes place 2 days before Christmas in an isolated town in Colorado. And the whole story takes place over 5 hours. These very strange people come to track down and kill somebody, and they get the wrong house. The house is occupied by a woman who herself, she's hiding from people that she thinks are hunting her. And she's there with her 8-year-old daughter, and then they all get trapped because there's a snowstorm. So, like another rom-com.
Yeah. Although that immediately has kind of a cinematic quality to it. That's very cool.
Great.
Yeah.
My first 4 books feature a private detective named Nils Shapiro. He's comes back to make a cameo in the murder show. He's in a few chapters, but it sets up his return. That book is coming out in December, called Dark Humor. And then next year, this is really weird. It was just like a weird how things happen, but I have 3 books coming out next year. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, one new start of a new series called Liar's Creek, my historical novel that I wrote in 2019, but it's finally coming out, and then another Nils book is coming out.
I like how you're like, it just happened. Like, I found $20 in my pocket. 3 books are coming out next year.
It did kind of just happen. Like, one book got rushed forward, one book took a while. So,
all right. Do we have any questions from the audience? Yes, ma'am.
Why is he a tuba player? That's what you should be asking yourself.
So thank you. My question is actually for Matt. I gather you're from the Upper Midwest.
yes.
Yeah, and I'm also from the Upper Midwest. And so when you're looking to recreate that dialogue and that tone of that conversation, what are your favorite things or favorite individuals or to listen to for the style of that conversation? Because I find that hard to locate.
Oh, well, I live there now. I was in Los Angeles for a while, but I've lived back there for a while now, and I'm surrounded by it every day. If you ever watched the movie Fargo, I remember when that came out, I had been living in Los Angeles maybe 5 years, and I thought, you know what? They kind of pushed it a little too hard, but that's not really how it is. But then when I went back for the holidays once, there was a high school hockey tournament because that's what we do. And I heard some people from Fargo in front of me, and the concession line they said, $2 for a Coke. No way. And it's just like that. I'm surrounded by it. So it's just, now it's
That's
natural
great.
for me. Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions? I want to ask a question going off that about the regionalism in your books. Is that necessary? Do you need to have an identifiable location as a writer that you keep consistent?
I think so. For me, it's important. I mean, I set a lot of my books in New England because about 10 years ago, I was looking for a location, and I just kind of thought New England as a concept is kind of creepy. So I went there. I went to Manchester, New Hampshire, and I'm like, yeah, this is the right feel. So ever since then, so this book takes place in Burlington, Vermont, where I've never been, but I've did a decent amount of research on it. But I like places that are small, but not too small, but there's enough open space where you could hide something.
I just think that it has to feel like a real place, whether it is or isn't. So, and it has to be consistent. So I get emails from all over about people who grew up in Minnesota and moved away, and it means a lot to them. But in The Simpsons, Springfield, wherever they live, feels like a real place. In Game of Thrones, Westeros feels like a real place. It doesn't matter if it's real or fake. It just has to feel that it exists, like it could exist.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is a genuine question, particularly for Carter. I don't like to read paperbacks. So I was curious as to why paperbacks in some cases, no hardcover, and hardcover in other cases. I've always wondered about that. And since your book seems to be in paperback,
Yeah.
I just wondered about how that comes about.
Yeah, that's a great question. Paperback versus hardcover. That's completely a publisher decision. And I remember, so I'm with Poison Pen Press, who's big. So Frida McFadden is with Poison Pen Press, and it's mostly trade paperback. And I remember my editor early on, I've been with them for 6 books now, kind of said, like, people will pay $15 for a trade paperback, but unless you're really a known entity, it's hard for people to spend $30 on a hardcover. So that was kind of the motivation there. And as authors, your ego says, hey, I want to be in hardcover, and I've been in hardcover before, and it's great. But in terms of sales, it does make a difference. So I will say I'm very happy for me at my level with trade paperback.
Yeah, my last 4 books have come out in hardcover and paperback at the same time.
Well, I'll go screw myself then.
Especially in this genre where people will read sometimes 2 or 3 books a week. It's just hardcover's tough.
Yeah, quick, and again, show of hands. How many people here prefer audiobooks? Few. Oh, more than I thought. Oh, okay. All right. Yes. Kate.
That was actually my question. Audiobooks are booming. They're so popular now. Are any trends like audiobooks affecting your writing? Are you writing more dialogue heavy? Are you writing more plot driven? Are you adapting at all?
That's a great question. I don't even think about it. And I haven't been told ever, like, hey, maybe, I'm very dialogue heavy anyway. But I will say you do see it and you probably know this too, you see it as an author when you get reviews, like your audiobook, they just either love it or they hate it. And your plot and your story accounts for maybe 50% of that opinion. And, so tell me what you did. There's 2 people who narrated and they're brilliant. I actually interviewed them on my podcast, and it's gotten a lot of lift and a lot of audio sales just because these voice actors are incredible.
Yeah, I tend to write a lot of dialogue as well. It's where I come from. having written television comedy, I insist on veto power on the narrator because I think it's really important. They can make a book or break it.
Totally.
Do you listen to your audio versions?
I don't. I'll listen to the free Amazon snippet. It weirds me out too much.
And I don't because I don't, for the same reason I never go back and read it. I can't.
Never.
I'll want to change it. And it's too late. I can't do it.
Did we have any other questions? I have a question. If not, okay. We mentioned, the publisher's choice when it comes to hardcover, paperback. Did either of you with these books receive? We discussed this before the panel. Receive any pushback or input or changes to the title or cover of your books that you?
Yeah, always. Like my publisher in particular has a very kind of secretive way of choosing titles that they've developed over years. It's a testing algorithm. I don't want to call it an algorithm. I don't know if it's an algorithm, but they're tested somehow. So my titles always change. They always say, give us 50 titles. I don't care. And we'll test them all and see what ranks to the highest. And same with cover. They give me the cover and then we have a discussion, but they'll present it. Here are the comps that we looked at. Here's a write-up about why we think this works. And so, yes, we get to have veto power over everything. But this is what they do. Who am I to say this is a bad title or a good title?
Yeah, on this book, the title stuck, my original title. The first cover they sent me was not good, and it took a while to get the cover right. Yeah.
I love the title, The Murder Show, by the way.
Oh,
I'm glad they didn't change that. That's a fantastic
thank
title.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, the cover, I'm always curious. They say don't judge a book by its cover, but we all do. When it comes to your covers, what do you particularly look for to make a cover that's really good for that book?
Yeah, I mean that's the in-house art direction's decision, right? So when I get the cover, it's not like I'm saying scrap the whole thing. It's rare that I would say scrap the whole thing because again, I'm not the one doing the market research on book covers because they're thinking about not only how does the cover look, how does it look on a 3.5-inch screen that you're flipping through at 1,000,000 miles an hour? And so Tell Me What You Did is a good example of just this bold, brilliant orange cover that just, I mean, I think that's one of the reasons the book has been so successful is it's part of the package. And there's somebody's job who's like reads the book and thinks about this is what is evocative. This feels like a thriller without specifically being in your face about it. So, I mean, if anything, I'll say like, oh, the hair color's wrong in the book or whatever, but that's it.
Yeah, that's the big thing is thumbnails. It has to look good in a thumbnail because even if you don't shop for the book online, you might read about it in a blog or a online newspaper. And so it has to get across whatever it needs to get across in a very small format.
Yeah.
But that said, there are some covers that look much more professionally designed than others. And that's what you're looking for. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is it true that you have to sell a certain number of paperbacks or hardbacks before Amazon will put it on a Kindle?
So she asked if you have to sell a certain number in order for Amazon to put it on Kindle. I don't believe so. I have no idea, but I mean, I feel like when my books are released, they're released simultaneously on Kindle, on Nook. I know, once you get a certain number of reviews on Amazon, you start appearing more. I think that number was like 100 or something like that. But this is all hearsay. Do you know?
Yeah, and a matter of that's not true. As a matter of fact, there are some books that are only on Kindle. There is no print version, and so and like Carter, my books come out in print, audio, and digital all at the same time.
Okay.
All right. Let me ask one last question before we sign off, and you two can go start signing. What are there any writers, other writers nowadays that you'd like to that you're enjoying or would recommend? And it's fine if you can't, if there's none.
Zero. I'm constantly reading, and I read in and out of the genre. I guess my relatively recent, and I had never read John le Carré until the pandemic, and now I obsessed with that writing. A lot of Brits for some reason. Kate Atkinson, the Jackson Brodie series. It's a long list.
Yeah, I frustrate all my readers with my newsletter because I'm always recommending nonfiction because that's mostly what I read. I don't read a lot of fiction. I think it pulls me out too much or I overanalyze it. So if you're looking for a nonfiction recommendation, there's a fantastic book called The Mysterious Case of Rudolph Diesel. Stay with me. By Douglas Brunt. And it's about the guy who invented the diesel engine and how he died and how he was maybe murdered by the Rockefellers. And it is fascinating. So that's kind of my jam.
All right. I want to say thanks to our writers today. Let's give them a hand.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.